So let's check out OS Snapshot on the Rocky Linux 9. What's up guys, it's Josh and welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to explore OS Snapshot, which is a powerful backup utility for Linux based systems. So whether you want to back up your local machine or multiple servers from a single machine, then OS Snapshot got you covered. So let's dive right into it. Now, I'm already logged into my virtual machine. This is Rocky Linux 9, and I brought up the OS release information so you guys can see it. But before we get started, here are some prerequisites to ensure you're prepared to follow this tutorial. Now, first, you should have a good understanding of how to install additional repositories and packages using the command line. And you'll also need to be familiar with mounting external file systems, like an external drive or a remote file system. And you should have some basic text editor skills. So I'll be using Nano for the configuration file, but at certain points I have to use Vi for, let's say, Cronjobs. You have to use the default editor, which I believe is Vi, and I know you could change that, but Vi is the default if you don't know how to change it. So you need to understand how to actually use Vi or Vim in order to add our Cronjobs. And then also, if you plan to run remote backups, you should at least be familiar with SSH, public and private keys, which is basically the most secure way of using SSH. And I'll show you guys a little bit of that in the configuration throughout the tutorial. I won't actually do any remote backups, but I'll at least show you in the configuration file where you can make changes to connect to remote systems. Before we move forward, I wanted to give a quick shout out to CIQ, the official partner of Rocky Linux. Rocky Linux is a Linux distribution that is intended to be a downstream complete binary compatible release using the Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system source code. The project is led by Gregory Kurtzer, who was the founder of the CentOS project. So check out Rocky Linux at ciq.co. Now, the first thing we need to do is get OS Snapshot installed on Rocky Linux. And we need to add the EPEL repository, and I'll show you guys that now. Let's go down and clear, and you can basically use DNF. So we can type sudo DNF and then install and then EPEL-release and then press enter, and that'll install that repository. So just go down and type in your sudo password and press Y here, and that will allow you to install other packages on your Rocky Linux distro. Now that we got that set up, all we have to do is install OS Snapshot. So we can type sudo DNF install or shots, and then there are a couple other packages you want to verify install. So open server and then also ORSync. You want to just verify those should be installed by default, open SSH and ORSync, but you just want to verify it. But OS Snapshot, that's how we want to install. So just press enter. It'll find all the dependencies and go through and install OS Snapshot on the system, and also verify that those other packages are there and install them on the system. So I'm press Y. It takes a little second to install, but I'll be back when it finishes. And also, you may see it asks to import GPG keys. Just wanted to show you guys that, but all you gotta do is press Y, press enter, and it'll go through and add those keys. Now, with OS Snapshot installed, let's go down and set up our drive or file system for our backups. And what I did was create a second drive on my virtual machine, which is 100 gigs, and that's where we'll store our backups. And this is like simulating that we have an external USB drive plugged into the system. Let's say it's a terabyte size. But let's say you want to configure that drive so it's a little bit better, because most drives you buy, they'll come with NTFS loaded on them, and you may want to format those drives so they'll work better with Linux. Then I'll walk you guys through that, because this drive that I added is not formatted at all. So we need to go through that process of formatting it and then setting up a file system on it, and then we'll go through mounting it right fast. So the first command I want to show you guys is lsblock, and this will basically list out all the drives on the system. So as you can see, SDA is our disk that we added. It's 100 gigabytes. This is an easy way to kind of find what you're looking for, but also another command you want to run is fdisk, and we can type -L for the option, but that'll give us the full name of this SDA drive, which is basically dev or /dev and then /SDA. And so let me show you guys that as well, but forgot about that. But you have to type sudo in front of it, press enter, and then you go through and find that drive. And as you can see, it's the dev SDA. So what I typically do is just copy that, because we're going to use fdisk to format this drive. We're basically going to create our partitions using fdisk, and we need to run sudo fdisk and then that drive name and press enter, and that will take us through fdisk. That'll allow us to configure the partitions. And let me show you guys the help right fast. If you type m, press enter, this will list out everything you can do within fdisk. And first thing we're going to do is actually add a new partition to the drive. And so let's just type in, press enter. That means for a new partition, and it's going to ask you the partition type, and we want a primary, which is default. So all we have to do is press enter, then the default number, the partition number. So the default is 1 because it's the first partition on this drive. You want to name it 1. So let's press enter there. And then this is the beginning of the sector of the partition. So you want to specify that, and the default is 2048. So let's go down and press enter. Now let's say you want to create a smaller partition and then use that other drive space for something else. You can create more than one partition. That's why it asks you for the number up there. Now, of course, I'm gonna use the full drive, so it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to at least point this out to you guys. If you want to change it up, you can use these commands right here. So let's say you want, it's a 100-bit drive. Let's say you only want to use 50 gigs of space off of that drive. Then all you have to do is type plus 50 and then G, that's 50 gigs. So it's the same with, you know, if it was terabyte drive, multiple terabyte drive, then let's say you want to use 1 terabyte out of a 2 terabyte drive or something like that, then you want to put 1 or plus 1 and then T, capital T. And then same thing with megabytes, petabytes, and all that good stuff. But we're going to use the full drive. Like I said, this is the default. You'll see it right here, but that's the full sectors on the actual drive. So let's go down and press enter, and now it basically stored all our changes in memory, and it hasn't actually done anything to the hard drive yet. Now the way you do that, or the way you close it out or write out your changes, is pretty much straightforward. All you have to do is type W, and that's for write, and that basically writes out the changes and exit out of fdisk. So let's press enter. You'll go through, create that partition table for us, and exit out of fdisk. So now we're good to go. All we have to do is we can actually check the drive. We can run lock again and press enter, and this will show you that you have a new partition on there. So SDA 1, and then it's the type is a partition, and it's 100 gigabytes on that SDA drive. Now the next thing we have to do is create a file system, or make the file system, and there's built-in commands. So sudo make, and then fs, and then there are multiple different types of file systems. So I'm gonna tab it out so you guys can see, just to quickly see. But you got 3, FAT, MS-DOS, XFS, ext2, ext4. We're gonna use ext4, Minix, VFAT, and CRAM file system. But like I said, we're going to use ext4. I recommend you guys use that for the file system for the partition. So specify our partition. So it's dev and then SDA1, and press enter, and that'll write it out to our file system. You just wait, and it'll create that file system for us. So now our drive is fully set up. Let's go down and create a location for the drive to be mounted. So typically what you do is create a directory under the mount directory. That's the default spot to actually store file systems or mount file systems. And so you want to mount them to a directory though. And so let's create a directory under mount called backups, and that's where we'll store we'll mount our drive. And then also that's the location we'll point our configuration file for or snapshot to put our backup. So let's go down and press enter. That'll create those directories for us. That'll create that directory for us. And now let's go down and mount our drive right fast. So all we have to do is type sudo mount, and then we want to specify that drive, which is dev and then SDA1, and we want to point it to our backups directory. So mount and then backups, and I'm gonna tab it out, take that forward slash off, and press enter, and it will mount that partition to that location. So let's press enter, and we can verify it by typing the ls block command. That's why I like the ls block command. It's an awesome command. But as you can see, it'll show you the mount points. Like here is our virtual hard disk for the operating system. We got our boot directory, roots, swap, and then also this extra drive that we created. it's mounted at mount and backups. So we're good to go. Let's go down and clear the screen. And now I want to walk you guys through how to configure or snapshot. And the first thing I make sure I tell people to do is make a copy of the original configuration file. So let's say you make a error in the configuration file, you can't find where the error is in the syntax. Then what you could do is grab that backup of the configuration file, overwrite the one you were editing, and then you're back at square one and you can start your editing process over. And it's just an overall good idea to have a backup of the original configuration file. So let's go down and type sudo copy. And like I said, we're going to back up that file, and then or snapshots.config, and we want to store that backup in the same location. So, and then we'll use the same name, but we'll add some to the end of it. So BCK at the end of it, and that'll create that backup of the file. Now we can get to editing. So let's go down and type sudo nano, and then let's edit our configuration file or snapshot.conf. Press enter, and I'll go down and quickly walk you guys through this right fast. First thing you want to set up is your snapshot root, which is the location you want to store your backups. And we know what that is based on where we mounted it. So all we have to do is type mount and then our backups directory, and you want to put a / behind it. That way it knows to store it within that directory, that backups directory. All right, cool. So we're done with that. And right here, this is another thing we want to and this is an important one. This will let or snapshot know to not run the backup automatically if the drive is not mounted. So this drive location up here, if it's not mounted, it won't run the backup. And then if you want to uncomment some of the external program dependencies, you can. Like for instance, this command copy, that's a good one to uncomment. Command remove is already there, or sync, and that just gives you more options while you're running it. You can even uncomment the du command. So that's essentially if that's part of the process. And now the next thing I need to show you guys is the backup levels. And essentially they changed this. Alpha used to be an hourly backup, beta used to be a daily backup, gamma used to be a weekly backup, and then delta used to be like a monthly backup. And I just wanted to explain that so you guys can understand what it's actually doing. So an alpha backup is hourly, and then this number over here on the right specifies how many backup copies you want to keep. So it won't remove any backups up to 6, and then it'll start removing the oldest backup from there. So that's for the alpha, then the beta, which is that daily. And I'll just show you guys the daily. So I'm gonna comment all the others out, and that's a simple backup. You're just doing a daily backup, and it'll keep 7 backups. Now if you want to go a little further, you can do the weekly and the monthly. That way you'll have monthly backups and all that stuff. So, but I'm just showing you a quick example so you guys can understand it. At least you understand what these are, and you can set it up based on your requirements. Let's see, under global options, now this is our logging information. So verbose, and it's set to 2, and this breaks out each level. So 1 is quiet, it'll only print out fatal errors, and this is basically all the log files. So you're basically telling the system what to log. So the default is 2. I recommend you keep it 2, which it basically prints out errors and warnings only. And then also you can do verbose and then extra verbose and debug mode for everything. We're not going to do all that, but then the log level, so log level 3, and this is where you want to activate your log file. So you want to uncomment this out. So log file, logs are stored under var log, and then or snapshot. And also just to point out one more thing, if you go in here and you start putting extra verbose or debug mode, those log files are going to get big very quickly depending on how often you run backups. So just be aware of that. And one other thing I forgot to show you guys under here, the extra tools, there is one for SSH, and you want to uncomment that out if you're going to be using remote servers. So let's see, where is it? So there we go. So command SSH, and that basically just enables remote SSH backup over ORSync. So just wanted to show you guys that at least so you guys can see it. But let's get back down to the last step, is basically what you want to back up. And you can break all this out. They have a whole bunch of examples for you to follow, so you should be able to see any and everything you can do with the backup. So like for instance, down here you got your SSH stuff, you got remote servers, all that stuff. Let's say you want to back up a MySQL database. You can specify that right here, you know, backup exec SSH, then the account and the server host name, then MySQL dump, and it'll basically dump out that MySQL file, backup file, and you can back that up as well. But the default is fine for a main system. So it'll back up your home directory, etc, which is all your configuration files, and then your user local directory as well. Now you can add other locations here. Let's say you have another, I don't know, drive somewhere, or where you're storing files in another location, then you can add that in here. Just follow this same format. You don't have to uncomment anything unless you need it, but this is basically the defaults. And so let's go down and close this out and save. So all I did was hit Control X and then type Y, and we'll write that out to that file. So that's all our changes set in the configuration file. Now, before we test out our backups, one thing you want to do is test out the configuration file. And this is typically done with most applications that have an option in order for you to test the syntax within the configuration file. So all we had to do is type or snapshots, and I forgot we had to put sudo in here because that configuration file does connect to areas. It has to write out the logs. It also has to connect to that location where we're storing the backup. So you have to run sudo in order just to test it out, as well as run the backup. So let's run the or snapshot config test. It's all one word. Press enter, type in our password. That'll test out that configuration file. And like I said, also, I'm sorry about that, the configuration file is stored under etc, which is owned by root. So you have to run sudo in order to connect to that file using or snapshot. Now let's go down and test out backups. And all we have to do is type or snapshot, and keep forgetting, but we have to type sudo. So sudo or snapshot and then -c. We can specify the configuration file, or snapshot conf, and then -t, and we set our configuration for the beta backup. So let's go down and press enter, and this will run a test to verify that everything works, and it'll spit out everything that it works. It'll make a directory, you know, the beta.0, that's the first backup, and it also even sets the permissions and all that good stuff, and then it'll show you it backing up every area that you requested it to back up for that beta backup. Now let's go down and manually run it right fast, and all we had to do is take that -t off, and this will run the beta backup for us. So let's go and press enter, and as you can see, it didn't take long at all. But let's go down and check our backup location. So let's go with ls-lah, and then let's just check out these directories. So mount and then backups, and let's check that directory first. So we got our beta 01, so I created that, and let's go up in here. You'll see the host name, we had that set in there as well in the configuration file. Let's press enter, and then there are our directories we specified. So the etc directory, the home directory, and that user directory. So we're good to go. Our backup ran successfully, and so that's a base setup. I just want to show you guys how to manually run it right fast. But now one of the most important steps is actually making this automated, and we can do that by using crontab or the cronjobs on our server. So let's go down and clear right fast, and I'll show you guys how to create a crontab job right fast. So let's type sudo cron tab and then -e and press enter. Like I said, it'll open up Vi. You're using Vi or Vim, one of the two, I'm not 100% sure. Whatever the default text editor is, that's what you're using. So you need to understand these commands, and what we want to do is insert some information in here, and we have to put it in insert mode. So you have to type I, that will put it in insert. You'll see a change down here at the bottom where it's in the insert mode. So now we can start typing it in here, and let's go down and type out our cron job. I already have one written out. There is a site you can go to generate cron job formats, so you can quickly put it together, you know, using that. I already have one written out for myself. So this is a cron job that's set up to run at 11 o'clock every night. So like I said, the beta is a daily, so let's say we want it to run at 11 o'clock every night. Then this is how you set it up. So let's type our location of or snapshot. So user bin, and we have to put a lot of this, you know, the full path of everything. So you can't use any shortcuts, or you can't just type or snapshot and it'll recognize it. Cron has to know the location of the actual bin file for or snapshot, so otherwise it'll fail. So -c, which is for the configuration file, so we have to type out the full path of the configuration file. So or snapshot .conf, and then we want to run that beta backup. So that's pretty much the format. So now that you're done editing in Vim, the way you get out of it, and I know people have a hard time getting out of Vim or Vi, all you got to do is type exit, and that'll take you out of insert mode. And then let's go down and write out our changes. So what you want to do is hit shift and then the colon. As you can see, it'll go down here and allow you to type in commands. So we want to do the write and quit. So basically the W and the Q. The W stands for write and the Q stands for quit. So it'll write out the changes that we made to this file. This is basically stored in memory until we actually write it out. So let's go down and press enter. And as you see, it's good to go, and it creates that cron job for us. All right, so congratulations. You have now mastered or snapshot on Rocky Linux 9, and therefore your data is safer than ever, and you have a robust backup system in place. Now, just a few key takeaways, because I want you guys to stay on top of it, but regular backups or your safety net. So whether you're an individual user or managing multiple servers, this or snapshot program will simplify the backup process. And just make sure you keep an eye on your configuration. You know, a simple typo, and that's why I wrote everything out for you, or I showed you everything, but a simple typo or a mistake in that configuration file can impact your backup. So always run that configuration test on it and ensure that your settings are correct. And then just like I did, make sure you test before you automate. You want to run a test backup, which is what we did. We wanted to ensure that everything works as expected. And then this will minimize any surprises down the road. And then don't forget that last step, which is automating. You know, automation is your friend, and setting up Cronjobs, make sure your backups run like clockwork. So thanks for joining me today. And if you found this tutorial valuable, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And also hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on the latest Linux tutorials. And if you have any questions or need further guidance, feel free to ask in the comment section, because I definitely like responding to your comments and helping people when I can. And so I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And of course, keep it techie.